Right, good afternoon everyone. My name's Chris Ratcliff. My talk today is not a hacker yet. Just to explain, I've been a security professional for about a decade. And about 4 years ago I started coming to conferences like B-Sides London and when SteelCon kicked off and Manchester and Leeds since then. And I remember going to them for the first time vividly and just seeing all of this new stuff. And all of this stuff that I'd only ever read about, I'd only ever seen as something that other people do. And I was sat there in rooms like this, and I saw people holding up bits of electronics, pointing at outputs, typing things into terminals, and talking about stuff that they'd made. And it was amazing. But then as the years went on, I started thinking, I can't do this. This is like going to see a magic show. And people do this stuff and it's amazing and I can't unpack it. I can appreciate it, I can understand what they're doing, but I can't do step one. And it starts feeling a bit uncomfortable. And this isn't an imposter syndrome thing. This isn't like, oh, well, I actually had all these skills and I just didn't feel confident. I could do nothing, as will become entirely apparent very, very soon. And I thought, every man, woman and child at these conferences knows more than I do. I mean, my laptop has no stickers on it. I don't own a black hoodie. I thought, I need to do something about this. And it came to mind to what I've come to know as the New York question. So, a few years ago, got on Facebook, as we all did. We started looking up old school friends. And one had moved to New York and was working in TV. And we were messaging back and forth, and I said, wow, it's really cool, you live in New York, I'd love to do that. And she just goes, well, what's stopping you? And in my head I was like, but no, that's really an excuse. No, that's an excuse too. I don't know. I haven't got a good answer. I can't say, well, obviously I can't go because I've got this important thing or that thing or this. And I thought, the problem is, it's what I kind of put onto a spectrum. So imagine all the things you want to do in your life, all of your interests, all of your hobbies, all of the stuff that you come into contact with. And this is all the positive stuff. And it kind of breaks down into maybe one day, you know, those sort of floaty ambitions. Maybe one day you might want to learn a language or learn to paint, or you might want to travel the world, and you think, I'm probably never going to do this, really. You know, this end of the spectrum, I can die happy if I don't ever do these things. And then at the other end, you've got, oh my God, wow. Oh, this is amazing. You might have had a moment like this today where you see something and you go, I must go and do this. I've got to go to that place. I've got to see this thing. I've got to do this. I've got to learn how to do that. And you can think of nothing else and you're just excited. It's this bit in the middle. I want to, but. And it's the but that I was getting stuck on. So I thought, well, what is it? What is that but? What is the reason that people often don't do stuff? Time. We're all busy. Nobody thinks of themselves as having oodles of free time. Money. Okay. If you want to learn to fly or discover the Higgs boson, you need a fair amount of money. If you want to play about with open source software, we're back to time. If you want to buy books, you can buy them off Amazon for pennies. Because I've been selling them to Amazon for pennies, which I don't know how that works. If you want to build a server farm, people can't give away their old desktops. Interestingly, time and money become much less of a factor as you move towards this end of the spectrum. It's like, how many times have somebody said, or have you done something where you've gone, I can't really afford it, but you know what? Or, I haven't got much time, but I've got 20 hours of this box set to watch. I'll binge it over the weekend. Suddenly you've got time. The thing that got me was fear. Plain and simple. And it's, what was I afraid of? I've done computer studies at A-level, at university, I work in IT. Why am I afraid? And it's because this is stuff that I've failed at before, that I've struggled with before, that I don't have experience of, and I'm surrounded by people who can do it, or so I think. So it's just that internalized, absolutely debilitating fear. But I want to do it. That's important. Because if you don't want to do it, and you don't like it, don't do it. There's got to be a benefit. I've had people come to me and they say, I'd love to give a talk to an event like this, but I'm afraid. I find the concept of it scary. And you say, okay, well, either work through it and we do it, or if it's giving you sleepless nights and you feel horrible and you're throwing up, just don't. If there's not a good reason to do it, or there's not enough of a good reason to do it, fine. It's okay to step back and say, you know what? I'm going to concentrate on other things. But I was like, no, I've got to do something here. And I once had a very interesting conversation with somebody. And they said, whether it's time, whether it's money, whether it's fear, anything in life where you want to get from where you are now to some future position, what has to change? Simple as that. And again, think about the things in your life that you think, I want to do that. Do you need to train? Do you need to move? Do you need to do something to confirm in yourself that actually it's the right thing? And actually, when you think about it in those terms, is there a barrier? Is there an obstacle? You know what? It's time just to jump in and do it. So I thought, okay, what can I do? I'm worried. I don't want to fail. I need help. I need support. Fortunately, there are a couple of people in my life who could actually help me progress this stuff. So, first person I'd like to introduce you to is Rob. Rob has been programming longer than I've known him, and I've known him since I was 10. And we have completely different styles in that I understand the concepts. I understand a string and an array and a variable and all this sort of stuff. He does it. And does it day in, day out. So when we were at high school and we discovered networks, which at the time were kind of interesting and exotic, I'd get this. And I'd learn it and I'd understand it. And this was as far as it ever went for me. And I thought that was fine. Except Rob would go off and find a code library and he'd write something and he'd learn it through actually having software that does this. So I've got somebody who I can go to and I know will sort of will be there for me and who will help me and who won't judge me. By the way, particularly if you've seen the Amigas out today and you're having a bit of a sort of retro nostalgia fest, Rob did a great blog about reverse engineering the Amiga floppy drive controller, which even if you have no interest, it's actually quite an entertaining read. So please do that. The other person who I had in my arsenal is this guy, Jim, who apparently we're the generation that can't change a plug without a YouTube tutorial. Jim has no fear about cutting and grinding and welding and breaking stuff so he can fix it. And frankly, if there's anything that he can help with, he will. He's loyal. He can communicate well. And most importantly, he's not afraid to have a go, because if somebody else can fix it, so can he. So I thought, right, I've got people who can help me. I know what my fear is. I'm going to do something about it. And then I started putting it on social media as well, because there's nothing more pressuring than telling people you're going to do something to actually make you do it. So I thought, okay, I need a project. So what does that project need? So it has to be interesting, because it's got to keep your attention over a period of time, and you sort of think about these things in the background, and you want to sort of learn, and the more interesting you find it, the more invested you are in it, the more memorable it is. God knows, all the stuff at school that I had no interest in has long since vanished from my brain. All the little geeky, nichey trivia bits of nonsense that all of us in this room immerse ourselves in, firmly lodged in there. It needs to be challenging. Of course it needs to be challenging. I'm trying to learn. Not too challenging though. I don't want to put me off, because otherwise I'm just setting myself up for more failure. Achievable? Has to have an end goal. I've lost track of the number of times I've installed Linux on a box to go, I'm going to have a play with it. And then installed it and just sat there looking at a desktop and going, what am I doing now? I don't know. It has to be extendable as well. So once I've done it, once I've finished it, that's not it. Where can I then have that little additional leap? Where can I learn that extra additional little bit? But importantly, it's about the what, not the how. It's all about the requirements. Imagine walking into IKEA. You're holding an Allen key in your hand and you're going, right, what can I make with this? You're going to come out with God knows what. Walk into IKEA and say, right, I want to put books on a wall. Now we're talking. Also this year, at B-Sides Leeds, they had one of these badges. And it's the first time I've ever had a PCB badge. And it's like, you can solder stuff to it and you can load firmware onto it. And I was just like, I've never had this before. And this thing, it's kind of cool, it's kind of intriguing, and it's like, this is like the first step to all of those badges that you see from DEF CON and other big conferences, where it's this weird thing that people do magic stuff to. And again, we're back to sort of magic, but this is a good first step. So I thought, right, I want something hardware, I want something software. Okay. Fortunately, here in Sheffield, there's a company called Pi Moroni, which a lot of you have probably heard of and maybe ordered stuff from. And they do these kits, and they're fantastic. Because in one kit, you've got a Raspberry Pi Zero, you've got any expansion boards that you need, you've got a bit of a case that they put together, you get stickers, and it gives you the end goal. So I'm like, okay, this is kind of interesting. As you see at the bottom, solder, assemble, and code this scrolling notification kit. Well, that sounds fun. So we've got scrolling, we've got soldering, we've got coding, and it does notifications. That sounds kind of curious. By the way, if you've never seen a Raspberry Pi Zero before, they are astonishing. So that's £1 coin, just for scale. That's a bit over £9. And it's got HDMI, Bluetooth, wireless LAN, a single core processor, about, I can't remember how much memory, but it's like £9 for all of that. I think I paid like 150 quid for a Wi-Fi PCMA card once. So, fantastic. And because they're so cheap, you can build them into individual projects. You're not having to base things around a big computer. You can also lose them, as I did at one point, but I found it again, so it's fine. So, okay. Kit doesn't come with an SD card, power supply, and I need solder. Okay, well, I've got SD cards, I've got power supplies. Soldering. So I went on to Amazon and I said soldering iron. And then it said there are 9,000 results for soldering iron. And again, I know nothing about soldering irons. I know I want it so that it doesn't burn my house down, it doesn't burn my fingers, and it does the job. That's all I want. But where do you start in neither? I don't need a multimeter, I don't need a toolkit, I don't need all of the nonsense that they package with them. I just want a soldering iron. So, this is where I then go back to my little help. So I said, odd question for a Friday night. What sort of soldering iron is worth looking at? Jim comes back and says, this is the one that I've got. And Rob comes back and says, this is the one that I've got. And I said, you'll never believe this. It's the one I was looking at as well. Okay, tick, tick, tick. Right. So we have a conversation about soldering irons, as three blokes do on a Friday night. And it's only at the end I sort of say, oh, blimey. I say, apologise, this is going to be the start of a lot of questions. And it's only right at the end of the conversation does Rob go, what exactly are you up to? So we told him, and then we got into a whole other conversation. So, I've got my soldering iron, I've got my kit, I bought a little silicone mat so I don't destroy the dining table. In this day and age, what do you need? You need a web tutorial. So I read, and I watched videos of how to solder, and I sat there with my soldering iron and my solder in my hand, and I sort of practiced before I turned anything on. And I was like, right, deep breath, off we go. Who wants to see my first go at soldering? Fantastic. Here it is. Few problems. So that there hasn't actually made a connection. Those three are connected together. I think I've got 3 pins connected together there, 2 pins there. Oh, and this is a bit of soldering wick that I tried to use. I didn't know how, and it stuck to the board. I don't know. Right. I haven't had a good explanation yet for why solder wick that's stuck to some solder is the hardest thing in the world to get off. It took 2 of us and a pair of pliers. Anyway. So, I thought, you know what? One, I need to fix this. Great learning opportunity. I need to learn how to fix it. So, went back onto the internet. I've had so many Amazon deliveries doing this because every single time you find another thing like this, fantastic. Solder suckers worth their weight in gold. Oh. Plus also, if anybody's used it, and you'll know, when you push the plunger in, it's got stuff in, it's like spears of solder coming out, and it's kind of endlessly fascinating. But the problem was, this is part of the finished kit, and I'm mucking it up, frankly. And am I putting too much heat on it? There's a bit of brown stuff there, so am I damaging the LEDs? I should practice. That's what I need. I need to practice. So, having done this for all of an hour, I'm now an expert. So I tweet to Pimeroni and I say, what would be really good... Clicker's going to go slow today. So what would be really good, what I could really do with, is a PCB to practice soldering. So, it doesn't matter, I can practice desoldering it, I can do all of this stuff, that'd be fantastic. And then Tanya, who runs our kids track, came back and sort of said, you could just buy some cheap proto board and a bag of headers and practice with that. And I went, what on earth is proto board? Because I'd never heard of it before. Turns out, you can go onto Amazon and you can buy a load of really cheap PCBs and headers that are really good for practicing soldering on. I mean, they're like dirt cheap. And I tell you what, if you ever want a bit of a meditative task to do of an evening, sitting there with a soldering iron and you just get into a rhythm and the world just sort of goes and it gets a bit, you get in the zone and it's quite kind of fun. And, I started getting better. There's still, some absolutely awful ones in there. But I could now just start practicing and keep going. And, I was learning things. I was trying different tips on the soldering iron. I was learning, which is the best way to hold a soldering iron. Really basic stuff. I did learn, don't ever rest a soldering iron on your finger. I didn't do this on purpose. Hurt like a bugger. Don't do that. Also, then you have a conversation with your wife that goes, did you take a photo of your finger to put on Twitter? No. So, carried on. And they're starting to look better. They're starting to look more uniform. Macro settings on your phone, brilliant for this sort of thing as well, because I'm not used to working on something where the scale on this is it's 2.5 millimeters between pins. The pins are tiny. And I'm used to working on stuff with 10mm spanners. I'm not used to sort of really fine stuff. So I was having to take loads of photos just to see, was it actually working or not? And it was. I'd put stuff on social media and I'd, again, talk to Jim and talk to Rob, and I'd do stuff like, I've got this problem. I've been soldering, and I'm now up to doing the proper board, but I'm getting this situation where, I'm heating the thing and I'm putting the solder in. When I pull the solder away, it's getting these, what do you call them? Witches' hats. We'll call them witches' hats. So, it's I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Jim and Rob goes, practice, you got headers, it'll be easier in person and, keep practicing and you're doing really well. Plus also, hashtag witch hats. So that's a new thing. But I got the header in. I got the card in, I got the image loaded, and it booted. I hadn't wrecked it. I hadn't managed to somehow miraculously bugger this thing up. So, there it was. An SSH terminal. I got it connected to the Wi-Fi. I got SSH working. I was like, yes. I'm now going to run every Linux command I know. It's not a lot. It's a start. But that's it. It is a start. Because this isn't the first time that I've tried to do something like this in my life. A few years ago, you won't believe this looking at me, I decided to start running. I've stopped a long time ago, but I started. And I basically left my house one day, and I ran for about half a dozen paces, then I stopped, then I walked a bit, and jogged and stopped, and I was at the house for 12 minutes, and I came back and I was knackered. I thought, well, that didn't go well. Let's see how tomorrow is. But it sounds kind of odd. I didn't know how to run. I mean, I knew about putting one foot in front of the other and not falling over, but I didn't know how to run. I didn't know how to pace myself, how fast I should be going, how to breathe. So I just thought, well, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to keep doing it and see what happens. I bought a treadmill. That was a mistake. Because if you don't know how to run, you can't use a treadmill. Because, how fast do you set it? Are you supposed to be sprinting? Are you supposed to be going slowly? I'm just walking here. Is that enough? Plus, it's also incredibly dull. It's so dull. I basically decided I would rather run in the cold and the rain of a winter than to run on a treadmill. But I stuck with it. I kept doing it. And I started setting myself targets. So, here's me entering the Sheffield 10K. I'd gone from 0 running to 10K. And I was like, the more I do it, I can regulate myself. I know my pace. I know how to breathe. I know when to go fast. I know when to go slow. I can do it. I'm thinking less about the running, and I'm now sort of thinking about other things in my head to try and amuse myself. I'm going exploring, so I'll instead of thinking about running, I'll be like, what's over here? What's over here? Let's go around here. Let's go down there. And I thought, okay, let's go for a big one here. Half marathon. 0. 8 months later, half marathon. And I thought, I can't let myself back out as well. So I told people about it. I got sponsored for charity. Any attempt now, I now had to go out. I literally was setting my alarm at 6 in the morning so I could go out and run literally in the rain. And I'd come back and I'd be soaked through, but I'd done it. And everyone else was just going up for breakfast and you're like, cheers, thank you. So here's me at the Silverstone half marathon. Deeply attractive, I know. This is me about 11 miles in, and I'm kind of actually on the pace I want to go at. And my God, I'm actually doing it. And I did it. I actually ran a half marathon. I didn't stop, I didn't walk, I didn't fall over, I didn't just give up. I actually did it. Now, I should point out, I wasn't the quickest. This guy was. Scott Overall. He did it in 1 hour and 5 minutes. Does anybody want to guess what my time was? Yeah. Better than that. I did it in 2 hours 30. And I was in 5,350th place. You know what? I'm happy with that. 2.5 hours was my target. I got round. I did it. Next day I could barely walk, but I did it. And this is the thing. A lot of people, if they start a project, if they start something new, they think to themselves, I'm not going to bother because I can't be the best. I can't know everything because there are people who will know more than me. You know what? I'm happy being the 2.5 hour guy. I want, this is competent. This is faster than a lot of people who don't do this at all. So what can I do to get myself to a level where I'm competent? And that's sort of what really stuck with me. One other bit of advice that I did get was seek help. I don't know if it's about learning stuff or just general advice. But I I got help. On the left, this is the last bit of soldering I did unaided. So this is entirely self-learning. Tanya from the kids track came and said, I'll teach you soldering. I sat down 10 minutes at a soldering station, went through. And this is the difference after 10 minutes of somebody actually sitting there with you going, this is what you're doing wrong. This is what you could be doing better. This is why it won't work. This is how it works. And just really, really basic advice when you're at the bottom of that learning curve. The most simple advice is the best thing to just help you improve. And what's amazing as well is that, I was worried about failure. I was worried about what people would think of me. And I've been putting this stuff up online as I've been progressing. And the people who chime in and sort of go, oh, maybe you should do this wrong. Or maybe your soldering iron's the wrong temperature. Maybe you're holding it in the wrong position. You look in the security community and there are people who are doing this sort of amazing research and they're doing all this really technical stuff. And they're chiming in and sort of helping me because that's kind of the hacker spirit. It's, you help, you share, you teach, you learn. And it's so humbling in a lot of ways to actually see people who you think, well, they shouldn't be bothering with me. And they're like, oh, no, try this, do it this way, try that. And it really does make a difference. And the more that people do that, the more that people chime in. And I would advise any of you, if you see other people in your fields doing this, speak to them, help them. Because it helps normalise that they're not the only people having this problem. They're not the only ones feeling this fear. They are going through the same stages that everybody else did. And the community won't judge you, they will help you. And I did it. I finished it. And it works. Somehow. I didn't knacker the LEDs as I thought I would. The Raspberry Pi at the back, it all works. And it's got all the example code. So, both of the things you see there are stuff that comes packaged with it. And the Prime Moroni kits, if you want to sort of do this sort of project, you want to learn, is a fantastic starting point because they give you one-line installers, they give you all the libraries, they give you all the example code, and once you've stopped looking about with soldering, this goes together in half an hour to maybe do the software installs and just to sort of get a feel for it. And the reason that's important is it's progress. You can feel that you're actually making progress. You've achieved something. And that's what it is. And it sounds like such an odd little thing, but once you start getting into it, you think, okay, I've done this. Heavily assisted, but I've done it. I wonder what else I can do. What's the next little step? What's the next little thing I can learn? I've got, it starts the brain going and you start thinking about it, even when you're not there, and you find this stuff sort of popping into your head going, okay, well, we've got half a dozen characters. I wonder what we can do with it. And what makes this so exciting is that humans are really good at doing things that they're comfortable with. So we all sort of think in ourselves, you know what, I'm really good at this. And I'm really bad at that. And doing that is uncomfortable. And doing this, you feel good because you can do it. You've got a level of accomplishment. You probably see me going around today. This is what I do over a weekend sometimes. I stand in a forest and take photos. I've been doing this for 20 years. And I've been thinking about photography, and I've been doing photography, and I've been processing, and I've been watching videos and websites and tutorials. And I'm really confident doing this because I have all that embedded knowledge. So if you start going down this path of thinking, well, you know what, I'm just going to stick with what I'm good at. I'm going to stick with, so all of this nonsense and garbage that's in my head, I'm just going to sort of stick with this because it's good. What are you missing out on? What aren't you doing as a result that you actually want to do, but you just need to take that leap? And one thing that I love with the Pi Moroni kits is that it's not too hardcore. It's based on the idea of things. So what do you want to do? Here's a board to do it. Here's a hat to do it. Here's a tutorial on how to do it. Here's the bits that you need to make it work. You're not dealing with just individual transistors and individual controllers and circuit diagrams and that sort of thing. So it becomes quite inspirational. And you start looking through going, oh, that sounds interesting, that sounds interesting, that sounds interesting. And the more excited you can get, the more you will sort of carry on with it. To give you an example, I mean, I'm up here because of great talks that I've seen. I went to the very first B-Sides London. I sat on the train going home going, I could do a talk about this, and they didn't talk about this, and that would be a really interesting talk. It's energizing to find something new and to progress into it and to feel that learning curve. And the more I've done this, the more I've thought to myself, you know what? I want to do more of this. Because I've got my one kit already and I've started sort of doing that. What else can I do? So I've started on little name badge. And again, we're dealing with new parts and new libraries. And if any of you use, those like flight tracking apps like Flight Radar 24 and FlightAware and stuff like that, they have a program where you can build a receiver and you put an aerial in your house and it will pick up all the data in your area and it will triangulate it with other people. And that's where their network information feed comes from. That's what you see in the app, is what's been gathered from people's houses. And in return for about 50 quid's worth of bits all plugged together, you get a $600 a year enterprise license, so that's fun. But I was thinking, okay, well, if I have a box that's doing flight tracking, and I've got now 2 network connected displays, well, that could be interesting. What can I do with this? How can I get information out of this and put it onto here? How can I get a notification from this to talk to this? And again, you start going through this process where you're like, well, what about if we do it like a web service? So what if I push it out externally? What if I tweet it? What about if I store it? Could I put it on a dashboard? Not starting from scratch. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to do that little bit extra to go, okay, well, now I can do this. Let's see if I can just add a little bit more and do that, and do that, and do that. And over time, just build up that stack. The no starch press. I love what I've seen of theirs already. I love, because coding has always been the thing that's worried me. And I've spent a lot of time talking about the electronic side of it because that's kind of the first thing. And it's nice in this virtual world that we live in to do something physical and have something in your hands that you can do and you can make things. But it then starts getting interesting when you start applying code on the top of it. I've never been a great coder, but I'm sort of thinking, okay, let's apply ourselves. Let's actually concentrate on this stuff. Let's actually start working through what we want to do. What can we learn? What can we do? So they've got a whole range of Python books, which is where I'm going to start. They do one which is ciphers in Python. It's learning Python through doing ciphers, which looks very interesting. And you know what? A bit of this and the hardware side, and starting to put stuff into my everyday life, starting to be able to script stuff on my regular computers, on servers, applies to work stuff. It all just starts gathering that momentum, and it starts just triggering that learning and that sort of constant improvement. Suddenly the fear is a lot less of an issue. On that, any questions? Thank you. No? Oh, go on.
So, with your programming,
yep.
Have you started, or?
Yes. So, I've started just trying to do some basic stuff like, for example, the example code that comes with the Scrollbot kit. Some of it's system admin, so like learning how to have it start at boot. Then sort of saying, okay, well, what can I do to have it display more than one thing? So starting to put together code to take the example code and every few seconds start cycling through it. I've got ideas for how to then sort of start doing having how the numbers appear and stuff like that, which I haven't yet learned how to do, but I've got that idea in my head and I'm starting to sort of work through what's going to give me the effect that I'm looking for. And then so that's kind of the first bit.
What language are you writing?
Python. All Python. So all the examples are in Python and all the tutorials on the primary site are in Python.
I can give you because I learned self-taught and self-programming a couple of years ago. And I can give you one recommendation. Find a good IDE and let that help you do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
So if you do the syntax checking and making sure you don't do these silly mistakes, commas and quotes and stuff like this.
Oh, okay.
You to relax and
That would be good.
get out of your head. And you can use the IDEs to far better. They're good at spotting mistakes that we as humans don't see.
Yeah.
So find something like that or something like that that can help you with syntax highlighting.
That'd be good.
That sort of stuff. It'll mean that it makes it very easier to get good luck.
Thank you. Will do. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm doing it in Nano at the moment, which is.
Oh dear.
it's the same way I started. The same way I started doing HTML was in Notepad, so it's kind of. I think I'm probably making it unnecessarily hard on myself.
I wrote two things. One of them is I'd recommend going on YouTube, look up B-sides leads to talk by a guy called People.
Oh yeah, the guy who's ex-army and yeah.
You have to think about excuse booking. That's been, since watching that talk, a lot of change personally for me.
Mm.
So I'd recommend definitely look at that for your
Okay.
excuse booking because
Yeah.
you'll find that will change a lot of the things you do as well as otherwise you go away.
Mm.
The second thing I did is that I used to be a techie many months ago, and I became a sales guy instead. And people were real big to shoot me. Well, I decided about October last year that I was going to take the various Raspberry Pis I'd won, etc. Like, actually do something with it. I decided I was going to do a picture frame.
Oh yeah.
Dead easy, hundreds of YouTube videos on it. The only thing was that none of them worked. Not a single one. So then I used the other bit, which is a blog.
Mm.
I wrote a full blog on how to do it.
Mm.
This bit here works, this is network code. This here is when you change your Wi-Fi password and actually can't now get back on your pad. And all these kind of things, and I'm trying to get actually my most popular page.
Yeah.
Because the amount of people have gone through exactly the same problem as me, but none of this works. So I'd also say be careful on your YouTube videos. You can also assume, oh, well, you'll know how to do this. I have no idea. But it enabled us at Christmas to turn off the photo frame and load the Google page for tracking Santa.
Ah, cool.
So from Christmas Eve, that's how I literally sat there. With the kids, look, now my eldest is 14, now I'm teaching her to tackle.
Very cool.
It does work.
Mm.
Also, you have got family, I recommend it. It's a good way of also to encourage others in the family. Because if they get better than you, they can then show you as a little. Sometimes a bit harder as an adult to see.
Definitely. And I think the one thing that I would love to do at some point is to actually create a bit of code and share it. And again, it's that half marathon thing where like now the idea that somebody else will be interested in code that I've written just seems like the end of a very, very long tunnel. But
So the thing that makes it good is your experience you've gone through already. Love that. Start with that. Because you know it works, you know how you do it, you know what pitfalls you went through. Don't put them solved wrong. Solving that is meant to be fun. Document all that kind of stuff because there will be other people out there who are at ground zero. And that will give you the impetus to think, all right, well, we will get about it. Let's do something else.
No, I appreciate that, and yeah, certainly, sharing it and helping others would be good.
I've got 2 spare ones. Let me know if you want the others.
Anyone else? Anything else? No? Thank you very much all for your time and appreciate it.